Burnett, Vice Chair of the Development Review Board. I'm going to call the meeting to order. We'll go through the items in the agenda in the order in which they appear. All of the communications have been posted online. No latecomers this week.
Well, I think Brian is supposed to join us. I don't think
Sorry,
yet.
late posted items on the communications. Okay. All right, so the first item on our agenda is CP 25 442 351 North Avenue. Do we have the applicant here?
Yeah, right there.
Eric, you're up. You're up.
Yeah, I don't even know why I'm here.
I know where you're.
Huh?
And when you're
Are
ready.
you gonna speak for?
Yeah, you.
Yes.
Right, yeah, if you wouldn't mind sitting here, and then for anyone who wants to speak on this item, if you wouldn't mind, raising your right hand and swear everyone in at once. Got both of you, is that it? All right. Do you swear that the testimony that you give tonight is true and correct under pain and penalty of perjury?
I do.
Thanks, Sharon. All right, with that, I know there are a lot of materials online. A lot of chatter out there.
Yeah.
No, it's good.
If you wouldn't mind giving us a bit of an overview of why you're asking for the revision to the TDM, and then just a brief overview, and then pass it over to the board to ask any questions.
Well, so at Cambrian Rise, we partnered so-called with, Champlain for us in Cathedral Square. They're building affordable housing, icing units, and they know, Michael knows more about this than I do, but in terms of I think they're looking for an exemption from certain aspects of the TDM requirement. And so I'm probably not the best position to really speak to it. Actually, Miranda. Yes.
Sorry, Michael.
So, it's a little, it's a little confusing, to me, because I think that, the building that they're currently building apparently is exempt. Scott?
I don't think any is exempt.
Huh?
I don't think any is exempt.
Exempt. Well, it would have been exempt before the ordinance, before that section of the ordinance was amended.
It would have been exempt if Cambrian Rise had not been amended and received a maximum parking waiver in 2019.
Yeah. And so. So when that was amended, I think two of the buildings nonprofit buildings were completed and occupied. So it didn't seem to me like, just as a general, not this specific, but a general proposition. If you had amended the ordinance and limited us to 3-story buildings, you wouldn't be asking us to take a floor off this building, probably. So I kind of look at it the same way. Why do we have to go backwards? And they built their buildings under that assumption, and they occupied them. And I understand when you make an amendment to an ordinance going forward, you're subject to those changes, but I don't see why it's retroactive to buildings that are completely occupied.
Eric, I think I could jump in with if that's okay.
Yeah.
Sorry about
Please.
that. I'm so slightly confused about the order of business, but Michael Monty, CEO of Champlain. I think as Eric stated, the Laurelton and Jupiter were both permitted as affordable housing and are exempt. They have been. They were exempt by the city's ordinance when they were permitted and then when they were constructed. That was in 2019. Retroactively applying a standard, I don't think is a good idea. I think it's difficult for anyone to be able to go into a situation and suddenly having this change. Now, this might seem like, well, it's just ephemeral, it's just TDM, it's not changing a whole floor, but you are simply retroactively putting something on our buildings, which doesn't seem right. But I think the real question is, why are they exempt? Well, they're exempt because they are affordable housing. They are separately financed, built, owned, managed in every way, every shape, every form. Eric never sees, or nobody else in that development sees the individuals who are coming here, and you're working with individuals and families and households. That's who you're talking to when you're doing the TDM. We work with those families, we support those families, and we are the people who are managing that property and owning that property. Nobody else is. Not the master developer, not our neighbor, just us. We are affordable housing developers. They are permanently affordable, and the people who come into our housing need to meet affordable housing standards. Now, what I want to say to you, which sounds a little like preaching, but I will anyway. The rents must remain affordable forever. The individuals we serve are a range of income, but 25% of the people coming into our housing are formerly units. The people who are coming to the housing are now making decisions between whether to pay rent or to eat. Those are the choices they're making. Frankly, that's where we're spending our time when it comes to us as owners of the property, as managers of the property. I don't want to be too dramatic here, but we're doing food drives for the people who live in our housing. We're not talking to them about what car they should be not buying, or what other kind of means of transportation they should be getting. They understand what they have, they don't have. And most of the folks who live in our housing don't have a car. Not everyone, good number do, but most don't. They can't afford rideshare. They can't. That's impossible for them to participate in that program. They are choosing between food and paying rent. Over the last 5 years, the amount of arrears in our housing overall has tripled. Meaning people can't even pay the rent. So when you ask us, can you do all of this? Can you pay into the TDM fund or all these other things? We wind up saying, you know, what we're doing is we're trying to add $10 a month or $20 a month for resident services for those folks to support our folks who live in our housing so that they can actually stay in the housing, so they can get the support they need, so they can get the services that they need, so they can get the food that they need to live. That's where that extra money is going. When you ask us to take that money instead and put it into transportation and management, it doesn't make any sense for the people we're serving. It doesn't make any sense for the people we're housing. That's the distinction and difference that we have between Eric and his good people who live in his housing, and like I said, most of the folks who live in our housing. So that's the reason why initially you created this exemption for affordable housing, because in fact, the needs and the people who live in our housing are different. They are. Many of them, chunk of them are working, but a chunk of them are living on Social Security. A good many of them are receiving vouchers and support to live in their housing. Some of them are losing those vouchers, and a good number of them are formerly homeless. So that's why that exemption exists. And just because he's going in, and if he wanted to build 10,000 units in that site, we would still be affordable housing providers serving that community. And that's why the exemption by intent was created. And that's why I think you need to allow us to continue to have that exemption. So I'll end there.
I have a kind of clarification for staff. Is this your project?
Yeah.
For the history on this property, for the original zoning and building was 2 separate projects. Is only the parking that came in later that reviewed the property as one property?
No. No, there have basically been 3 zoning. Champlain the original approval. And there was a subsequent project-wide amendment. And then we had a third project for it, and then that triggered the TDM. And yes, Laurentide and what's the name of Juniper built. And so is the Orphanage driveway. But that project-wide amendment lifted the entire project unit count to 950. And also included a project-wide maximum parking. If you look at the maximum parking waiver standards in Article 8, it says you need a TDM to do that. And so the applicant presented the TDM for the project. Hired 950 unit. With that TDM and got the third project-wide amendment. There's nothing retroactive here because the project remains under construction, it remains live. If Eric comes in for a permit for twice as many units and needs to amend his parking waiver again, you need to update the project-wide TDM. And that to me is the most significant trigger. The entire project. This is what the market is, the rentals, the home ownership. Got that project-wide maximum parking. That's what part of the that included existing buildings, buildings under construction, as well as
And I want to add one more piece to that.
I don't know.
Yeah. So we did get a single permit, it's a PUD, I guess, and one distinction we made. That I think was made within that PUD is that each building, we didn't want each building as they're built out over a number of years. To have to operate and be occupied on as temporary certificates of occupancy. So we've looked at, and I don't know officially what it is, but we've looked at each building.
it's a phasing.
I'm saying,
A phasing plan, that's.
right,
You
but
got
we closed out the permit for each building so that they get a permanent CO. And that's another reason why I don't know if that applies here or not, but it just seems like these buildings could be looked at independently. Even though they're part of a community that we created, they were built and they're occupied and they exist, independent.
I think the difficulty is you're using them for what's good for the rest of the project, but not the parts that you don't want in terms of they count as your inclusionary housing for the larger project.
Yeah.
But then
Yeah.
you don't want them to count for the TDM. That's the part that's difficult.
Let me just say that I don't think the inclusionary zoning should be relevant to the TDM piece. Those are separate things. We decided to do affordable housing as an opportunity. He and the city at the time agreed that we would do that, but he had, this is his responsibility anyway. I gotta go to the nature of this. Still, the reason why you said it had an exemption for affordable housing, there was a real good reason why, and the conversation that I just sort of presented was the reason why. It's hard for us as owners to sort of pass this cost on when we have so many other things to do. And the individuals themselves are having a whole range of difficulties around just simply transportation. We educate folks, we provide opportunities for folks, we tell them about what's available, all the things that we could do around transportation, but participating and getting and needing to pay that is the issue for us mostly. That and joining capital. I think it doesn't matter if we did 40% affordable housing, it's still affordable housing, it meets that definition. And I think, again, I think if it was 2,000 units, it wouldn't matter what we went from 750 to 950 to whatever it might have been. That's what you have as an exemption. And I gotta say that I could be pretty stupid around this kind of stuff. That seems pretty straightforward too. There was a reason why city council and planning commission, somebody at some point said there should be an exemption for these type of households. His requirement, our whatever it is, again, he doesn't even doesn't know anything about what we do from a management perspective. We pay into the HOA, that's about it in terms of we need to pay the roads, plow the roads. But after that, we're fully managing everything, the expense, the opportunity, the activity, the individuals, the resident services, the counseling, the education, all of that is ours. Everything around that property is ours, including paying banks, leveraging all the credits and everything else we've got. So this is our responsibility, not the master development, not the PUD's responsibility. So,
And you're right, we do get IZ credit because they're in our community. So I get credit for, we have to do 25% IZ. And that's being provided by deals that I do with the nonprofits, but I think that's disconnected from, like Michael said, why nonprofits or affordable housing was even conceived to be exempt from TDM. It's exempt for the reasons that Michael's saying, got nothing to do with anything else.
I mean, the way I read the ordinance, right, is like, if you have a singular building that contains a certain amount of affordable, like I get the point you're trying to make, but right, if you have a singular building that contains a certain amount of affordable units, it's considered an affordable building. And so here you have a PUD where you're including your 25% IZ units as part of a greater development. Like if you had a singular building like City Place, right, or something like that, you don't get a TDM exemption because you have the IZ units. You still have the TDM requirements because of the state bill.
isn't there an exemption for the affordable housing somewhere in the ordinance?
The way I'm reading the ordinance is, the exemption is for a building that contains 75% or more affordable units. I know.
I have all the buildings we own are that.
No, I know
No different than that.
But right, like, if it's just an IZ requirement in a singular building, it doesn't.
I don't know what, I'm sorry to argue, but I don't know what the IZ requirement has anything to do with the fact that we had to own these buildings. We don't own these buildings, and somewhere in there it says, therefore, only because of the IZ, we own the buildings and we built affordable housing because we wanted to be there. The fact that he actually had some land and he had some opportunity to satisfy the IZ requirement, that was really cool. We're building post apartments downtown. That has no IZ requirement, that's affordable housing, and that's the kind of housing that is out of Laurentine and that the senior Cathedral Square owns, that will continue, that we're building right now. So I don't understand what the zoning requirement is IZ not exempt from the TDM? Does it state that?
It's projects involving one or more applicable projects that also contain at least 75% of dwelling units. So it's like right, if you did an affordable, my understanding of the ordinance is if you did like a completely affordable project where that project had 75% or more versus having a project that does not meet that requirement with a particular number, like 25% of IZ does not hit that 75% project.
And if I go to my building folder at CHT, where it says, here is this Laurentine, I will see permit for that property that lays out the conditions.
As well.
Yeah. A separate zoning permit. I don't have a separate zoning permit. Zero?
Separate building.
There are 3 zoning permits, Cambrian Rise, Red Lines, there's a bunch of amendments, so there's basically 3. There's a separate building permit. There might be multiple.
phasing plan.
It's a phase.
If Cambrian Rise writ large had 75% affordable, they'd be exempt. Yes.
And what's the downside of letting the affordable housing be exempt, whether it's part of a PUD or not?
TDM's a pain, right? Again, it's a hassle, it costs money, right? When the city tossed parking minimums, we couldn't just toss parking minimums, we had to install this arduous TDM standard. So now we have it.
Yeah,
So
but this is a small way the city can help support affordable housing. Because they don't help support it any other way.
City Council to exempt inclusionary housing.
Huh?
Petition the planning commission and city council to exempt inclusionary housing.
I've been on my knees for years.
I mean, they're exempt from impact fees, exempt them from TDM, I don't know that.
I think that's useful.
Just like what is in front of us.
Yeah.
What this board can do.
Do you have the authority
to waiver for the,
I mean, this is what we would need to discuss in deliberative, because what we are held to is narrowly what the ordinance.
Yeah.
Says.
do you think this board has the
Does it
authority?
require IZ
Yeah.
housing to comply with
Just wait
CDM?
it, no.
You don't think they do?
Does it explicitly, does the ordinance explicitly require IZ housing to comply with PDM?
The ordinance requires TDM, except for under a narrow set of circumstances where it's not required. So by it not meeting that narrow set, which is 75% affordable units in the project, it is not exempted. So it doesn't apply, it doesn't have a narrow set of circumstances in which it applies. It applies in every circumstance except for a small number of circumstances under which it's exempted.
If affordable housing.
If it contains 75% or more affordable housing in a project.
I
is what
think,
it's exempted.
I know there's like a lot of back and forth on this, but I just wanna check if the board has any other questions on facts. I think there's probably a lot we can deliberative on this one. And I know, Sharon Butcher had also wanted to speak on this item, so before we go to her and anyone else in the public. Have any other questions for the applicant or staff?
I do.
Yeah.
So for to apply the transportation management program. What you're saying is that the cost of it is a burden to your project. Or,
I mean, for what I would say is that we struggled with getting enough. Here's the context. If I was to add $10 more a month or some amount more a month for rent with this. When I've been struggling to try to get more money per month for resident services to make sure that the people who are housing. Who are living in affordable housing. That sustain their livelihood or their resources or their ability to stay as renters, meaning we have resident services at that building, helping people be renters. Because they're struggling financially. And then we saved about 900 of our households in the last year. From eviction because they were struggling with their rent. This is a hard time right now in the community for people who are living in our housing, but they have our support. If I had $10 more a month, I would give it to another person to help them stay in their housing, not help them figure out how to get around from a transportation perspective. That's the struggle we have, and that's what I thought. The intent was to make sure that people who live in affordable housing had more support and resources for other things, not for paying into a TDM system.
Question for you, Scott, on the TDM, because I can't remember this, are there specific requirements for what is in the TDM at this point? And so it's not like they can apply for a TDM that with standards that worked for them financially.
There's a menu of options now. Which is a little bit different. The original TDM available here. I assume some more expensive than others. And cheaper than others. Yeah, there's a menu, you need to pick two. Pick the two cheapest ones.
Any other questions from the board? Or staff or the applicant before we go to the phone? Okay. Sharon, did you want to speak on this item as well?
So we have Sharon, we also have Cindy. Sharon, you're up, let's speak.
Just unmute yourself, Sharon.
Yes, I just got that option. Thank you very much. This is Sharon Busher. I don't live in this ward, but I was on the city council when this project came forward. And I happen to know the two people that are there before the DRB, Michael Monty and Eric Farrell. So, and I know them well and respect them. I think that what I've heard is, as I have understood what is being batted around, and I understand the distinction. I understand that, Michael the affordable housing units, structures were separated as a plan to keep all of the inclusionary zoning units in one place. Yet, as I understand from Scott, this was a PUD and therefore it is one project, and the criteria, it doesn't meet that criteria of 75% of the units being affordable to apply for the exemption. I understand that distinction. I think that this presents, and we learn a lot from, unfortunately, situations like this, that there needs to be more consideration about different ways to accomplish affordable housing. I am a huge affordable housing advocate, so I don't want to discourage any process that makes it more difficult than it already is to create affordable units. Having said that, what I came to speak about was the TDM plan. And what was in the packet was written that the applicant was the Federal Properties Management Company, or whoever oversees this now, was asking that they no longer, that they reduce the commitment from 10 years to 7 years. And I was going to speak against that. That's number one. Number two is that according to the information in the packet, once again, that there had been no actual free bus passes offered or documentation of that. I think that's an important component. And I want to, as Scott Guston referenced, with TDM, you can pick and choose what options are available. And as I was listening to Michael and Eric and the board ask questions, to me, and my job now, I work for the federal government and I have a different role, but I have access to a lot of different types of housing units now. And I want to say that that there are people who have cars in affordable housing units, as Michael stated, and there are those who don't. And I think that the free bus pass should be considered as we move forward. There are some amendments that I think need to come forward for people that live in affordable units, because some of them work and they need to be able to get there. And the bus is a cost that could be burdened by somewhat, the cost of that could be shouldered by the developer for a period of time. It doesn't have to be complete. It could be a 50% subsidy or something. I'm just saying this. And I think that also, I agree that the car share program is not really affordable, so I understand that piece. But access to public transportation is key, not only if you're working, but if you need to get groceries, if you just need to get out of your living space for your mental well-being. So I am feeling that I want to see the 10-year commitment. I want to see the free bus pass program be documented and reported so that we know that this actually has happened. And as I said, I hear the problem and I don't have the answer. I wish I did, but I don't. But I do believe that based on what I've understood, the dilemma is this was a project in entirety, and therefore the two structures that Michael oversees as part of the overall project really don't meet that exemption criteria. And I think that's unfortunate, but I kind of understand it. And that's all I have to offer. But I really hope that the board will keep that commitment to 10 years and make sure that the free bus pass option, I think it's only for a year, is in place and documented. Thank you.
Sharon, Scott, who's this?
It's me, Reed from Cathedral Square.
I can't
Great.
see it. There,
Thank-
so-
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, just wanted to check, were you sworn in before?
I did. I said I do, but I was on mute.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Go ahead.
Great. I'm Cindy Reed. I'm the Director of Real Estate Development at Cathedral Square. And we developed Juniper House next to Laurentide, which is an affordable housing community for seniors 55 and older. And Michael articulated pretty well who we're serving in terms of income. We're serving a pretty high need population in terms of both income and health needs. And I really think this is a process question. I know that you are all saying this is one project, but the whole PUD. But I think the elegance of a PUD is we're able to provide a mixed income housing community in a really dynamic part of Burlington. And that's what drew CHT and Cathedral Square to this project, along with being alongside market rate housing and having land conservation all be part of it. I think that interpreting this as one project is really harmful for the affordable housing buildings. Say this is a mixed income PUD that's built out over 12, 14 years. If in year one you build 2 affordable housing properties and another one, and then in year 5, there's an ordinance that you have to electrify all the buildings, does that mean you're going to require those initial 3 buildings to become electrified to the tune of, I don't know, $1 million or $2 million each? That would be cost prohibitive and it would shut us down. The TDM is much less of a cost concern, but it is a cost concern of the ramifications that it will have on our building. So I do believe it's an interpretive call that you all are making. I think that, as Michael said, each of these projects is financed and owned separately. And just to add another layer of complication for Juniper House, which is the building right on North Avenue in front, which is really the gateway into Cambrian Rise, we had to actually separate that into 2 ownership entities in order to, we have 2 separate capital stacks, which was the only way that we could get a 70 unit building financed in this environment of pretty hard to get capital for affordable housing. So it's a complicated finance structure. And that's on the development side. On the operating side, we have our budget, we have the rents, we're limited as to what rents we can charge. And as Michael said, if there's any room in that budget, we want to add to services. We have a incentive program to serve our homeless people that were homeless, housing retention program. We can lose our housed homeless residents if we don't provide early interventions, and we really don't want to cycle them out. It's a really critical time to get people on their feet and have them then become stable members of that community. So if we're spending money on the transportation, the TDM programs, it's money that we can't spend on programs. And that's literally what the budget choices are, with taxes and insurance going up every year. They run really tightly, these affordable housing communities. So I would say it's really an interpretive question about how you're defining project and choosing to have an ordinance that's passed in the future be retroactive on a building that's already constructed. I think it really sends a concerning message to affordable housing that's going into PUDs about what could happen in the future around financial stability. It's very concerning to Cathedral Square. It's very concerning to CHT. We want to keep working within PUDs, but this kind of interpretation is quite chilling. So I really ask for your thoughtful consideration on creating the exemption for the buildings that are already there and allowing the affordable housing project definition for the affordable units that are created subsequently to Laurentide and Juniper, so that there's the exemption from parts of the TDM that would have a cost burden on the affordable housing. We desperately need affordable housing. We don't need to make it even harder to exist and operate to serve the vulnerable folks that we're serving. Really appreciate your time and consideration.
Thank you. Asking if there's anything you.
I just want to add that, we're not stepping away from outreach and education. So I think a lot of what Karen might have been saying was around that. That's what we do in the context of the resident services folks, is outreach and education, providing opportunities for the other resources that might be available for them to get free bus passes and all of that. Working with them in terms of anything that they can do providing education. Question is, do we have to be joining Kevin, paying Kevin, doing all of the expenses, especially I think Cindy recognizes that our property taxes and our insurance costs have dramatically increased. And we're paying more than we ever had for those two particular items. And that has made it even more difficult for many of our properties simply to break even, and they need to break even, sure. We're doing okay. I don't want to get the notion that things are going crazy, but it ain't easy. And managing that, and again, that's what we had the opportunity of resources to put money into. I would put more money into the opportunity to educate folks about the resources they might have available to them in terms of transportation. And we will commit to that. That's something we're ready to do in terms of outreach and education in terms of the work.
Just curious, because I think this was the case years ago. Do you know how many of your residents, et cetera, get free bus passes, like as part of wraparound services?
I haven't, I don't know that number. I could certainly get you that, but I don't really know that number. I know at one point it was prevalent. At one point buses were free, right? So that wasn't, so for a good chunk of time here, we haven't had to pay attention to that. But certainly we can't afford providing free bus passes. I'm not sure how the bus company can even at this point, really. I know we can't do that. That's a very expensive proposition.
Any other comments or questions from the board?
Thanks.
With that, we will close the public hearing and move on to our next agenda. Thank you. The next item on our agenda is UP-25-527-116 Sunset Cliff Road. We have the applicant here for that.
Are they online?
You're online, Gary, we have camera, you see the applicant online. That's unfortunate. He was there for a concert. Guess he didn't have his mic.
Yeah, we will move on to the next item then, which is UP-25-577-189-191 North Champlain.
So quick.
Hello.
Thank you. If you want to give us a bit of an overview of the project, the materials submitted were. Oh, yeah, sorry. And then is there anyone that wants to speak on this item or anyone else in the room? Just swearing everyone at once. Okay. Anyone who wants to speak on this item, if you would raise your right hand and swear that the testimony you give tonight is true and correct under pains and penalty of perjury.
Yes. Hello, Michael Alvanos, from Tram, the owner of the property. So this property is up for essentially a pretty substantial rehabilitation. I don't know exactly when, but there was a fire on this property. Maybe
March 2024.
got it. March of 2024, there was a fire, caused significant damage to the upper portion of the building, specifically towards the front, top, and other portions. But the real issue that happened is fire departments, brought their, came in, sprayed water everywhere. Where the project was left vacant for a pretty healthy amount of time, and the interior ended up becoming extremely deteriorated throughout the process this. Tony did not own the building during this time. Essentially, what happened was there was a transition in ownership at that point. The original owner didn't have the means and abilities to take care of the property, so he decided to sell it to Tony in the process. But in that time, there was a pretty extended amount of time that I think at least a year had lapsed. So as a result, the original 6 units that the property had, that was, the project had in there couldn't essentially be put back in place without a little bit of support from zoning. So in front of you is an application for us to re-put the 6 units back into the property. We're going to try to maintain as much of the historic qualities of the buildings as we can. We're trying to upgrade the site plan, try to apply, it to make sure that people can park on the site appropriately. And, show you guys exactly where we plan on doing rubbish and trash removal. But essentially the bulk of the building on the outside, everything you're seeing is essentially just, replenishing the site back to a place where it should have been. So, site plan is pretty apparent. We're storing some parking. We are paving the parking lot, striping it. We show some, this thing, this thing. Don't know, it's not where it is working. Can't see it too well. Some trash locations in the middle. It's going to be screened. We have some snow removal spots on either side. Mary, if you want to go to the next page or wherever's running the show.
Thank you. I'm not driving the bus
Nope.
tonight, Michael.
You got a chauffeur today. So the site originally had 6 units in it. Again, we're just there's some pretty significant structural issues with the original design. What we're doing is we're going back in. We're going to add some walls to make sure that the building, hopefully over the next X amount of years is stable. This I tell everybody, through the rehabilitation process, we need to meet the Vermont Energy Code, which is a pretty robust code that we all have to abide by throughout the process. That means that we're going to have to make sure this building is well insulated, roof, floors, foundations, etc. As well as hopefully, if there ever is any kind of incident in this building in terms of fire, the new building does have to meet the new Vermont fire standards, which just came out. So that means that all these walls are fire rated, safety of the building as well as the neighbors are hopefully going to be protected much better than they were previously. So again, 3 units on the main level, 3 units on the upper level. You access the upper level through a stair moving up to the second floor. This is the second floor. If you want to go down to the next page. These are just some axons showing you that we're, there was a photo page too. Essentially, the exterior of the building is going to get re-sheathed, and either we're showing wood siding on the building, but there is an option to do like a concrete board siding on the building. I think we're going to weigh out the costs involved on both of those, try to see which one is cost effective for the owner. But new windows, new doors. The back rear of the property currently has some open garage doors here. I think we're planning on putting some garage doors in. Again, just trying to bring back the building back to a place where it was, hopefully, or it started to go through a substantial amount of neglect. So the staff notes had some information in there, and I got it to Mary later than I wish I did, but there are some architectural details that we plan on holding on to throughout through the building. There's some corbels and some ornamentation on the front portion of the building that we're planning on holding on to. There's some rafter tails at the rear portion of the building that we plan on making sure they stay. What else we have, Mary? But our intention is to, we're not gonna. I don't think there's any intention to remove or deteriorate, the building's historic qualities anymore. It has been, but we're try to reinforce those as best we can. I think we're just here to kind of give you guys an idea of what's going on, and hopefully it's a pretty simple process. We'll see.
Any questions from the board?
Are you the one that's gonna be managing the refurbishing and the details of the architectural details and so on, or do you have anybody
think you're handling the general contracting of the raw building.
Do you know what is underneath that vinyl siding and aluminum siding?
Any idea what's underneath the vinyl side?
It's a good red ball.
It's clapper.
It's original wood clapboards.
Yes.
Any other questions from the board? I know you all want to speak on this item as well.
Yeah, that'd be great. I just,
It would be helpful actually if you can go there just
Sure.
for audio purposes and just state your name and where you live.
Jonathan Rowe, I live at 193 North Champlain, with my partner Nora, so we're to the north. Reading the packet yesterday, it was said that the house is on the property line in one portion, and then it said close to the property line. If you look down our driveway, the house is on two different planes. The more easterly part of it juts out a little more. Whose responsibility is it for determining, is it on the property line, is it close, is there any part of it that's over? If the building is on the property line and the soffit hangs over this much with no gutter over the plane of our property line, are we responsible for what comes off the roof? Putting gutters on, is there any kind of ordinance for that? Is this the right place to even ask these questions?
Understandable question. I think the basics are that we don't like talk about or like deal with any property line disputes.
Sure.
The best that we have is the site plans in front of us and how they mark.
Okay.
Uh,
So I guess that there where it says it's on and then it's close to, so it's worded differently.
mhm.
And then I guess my question would be, say it is on the property line, the plane of the siding, roof overhang X amount, right? We're more worried about like parking under it, and we're at the point now too where we can't even open our car doors
Because of the snow off the roof,
because it's so tight.
just in general.
You know, obviously, we bought the house, we knew what we were getting into. Definitely weren't aware that it was gonna be able to be just renovated, after being vacant for 2 years. And then I guess another question is, because of the historical aspect, it doesn't have to conform to a side property setback, is that correct?
Yeah, so this is talking about sticking with the original footprint, so anything would be the same footprint that is there.
Because it's historical.
Well, there's some complexity to that scenario, it's more like pre-existing condition is the way to think about it,
So it's like grandfathered in because it was already there up to the property line.
essentially.
Okay, other question on that is, if it's vacant for 2 years, does that do anything to its non-conforming aspect of being on the property line?
No, because the building
Yeah.
is still there.
Building so there's just the wording in this says, although it's not conforming to that setback, and it's been vacant for X amount of time, which might change that grandfathered in aspect, is that not the case?
It's normally just if the building is like fully deconstructed, and even then there's a period where you can rebuild a destroyed building in the same pre-existing footprint before.
Okay. So I guess where would I go with the question about the roof, like stuff coming off the roof?
Have you met your neighbor?
Yeah, no, I'm just like, for sure.
I mean, I don't know where those property boundaries are. There
Yeah.
are parts of the old North End that are the Wild West, those buildings.
For sure.
built. I mean, there are some surveyors who aren't even willing to do surveys out there because they don't have any points from which to measure from.
Yeah,
Only to characterize that this is a very old neighborhood. Those parcels have been in place in over 100 years. So I don't know where the survey is, and this board will not get into property disputes.
I guess what I'm asking is like, Tony's been awesome. We've been working together on this stuff. Say the building's deemed historical, can you put gutters on a historical building? Like, say he's willing to, but it falls under this historical thing. It's like, no, you can't have gutters. Are
Don't
we
say
just-
falls.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, are we like stuck dealing with stuff coming off the
We-
roof and it's just the
we
way it
would
is?
not prohibit gutters on a roof. And we have lots of folks come in and give testimony about broken windshields,
Yeah,
fallen slate and things like that. And we understand that these buildings that were built sometimes with eaves over their property line have become problematic. And they might take steps like putting in snow guards or gutters. However, he's going to have an asphalt roof. You're not gonna have a big snow slide.
no, for sure.
If
It's
you're
more about the
putting a
gutters.
metal roof on.
Yeah,
But I think the best advice I can give you is get along with your neighbor and work together.
yeah.
Because the building isn't gonna be picked up and moved.
No, for sure, for sure. We, like I said, we were under the impression from the seller that that might be the case. We were hopeful, like I said, met Tony and have had a good relationship. I'm more just wondering what ability there is to like work together and what falls under the historical.
Well, in this
aspect of
proposal, the massing's not changing, the footprint's not changing, the proportions of the building aren't changing. So the physical presence of the building is going to be the same.
Yeah,
What we were grasping with the existing nonconformity was there were 6 units there that he can't claim now because the building has been empty for so long. So we went through a process and an allowable standard for an historic building rehabilitation that would remove the density caps, so he could increase up to the 6 units that were there. So what he's proposing is the same 6 units that were there prior to the fire. Just there was such a period of time that the building was empty. We can't retain that nonconformity without doing a little bit of gymnastics relative to the standards. And there is an allowable standard that will pave the way for reinstalling those units. However, the threshold's higher. He has to do a rehab, no vinyl siding. We're gonna be looking at those characteristics of the building that still speak to the integrity and the merit of the reason it was listed on the Vermont State Register. So we're not picking up the building. We're not gonna establish a setback that wasn't
Yeah.
there. If you figure that out, let me know
Yeah.
how. But otherwise, the same proportions of the building
Okay.
and massing are gonna remain.
Yeah, I figured there would, thank you, first of all. I just figured I'd be most interested in seeing. Like if we could, work out a gutter thing, I wanted to make sure if Tony was into it and willing to do it, that it wouldn't be negated by a historical.
Do gutters even have to go on zoning applications?
Exterior changes.
You would have to take into consideration what roof it's coming off, if it's a slate roof.
It's not, it's asphalt, yeah.
Asphalt, then you would benefit with gutters and.
The roof originally was a flat roof. That's why there are those brackets under the front cornice line. That roof that's on there now was added more recently.
So I would think that there's some, unless it's new construction, there might be some language as to how far the overhang of the roof is, beyond what the.
Well, that's right. The exterior dimensions are not changing at that, so
Right.
that's. I just want to be super clear. on
Yeah, no, that's like I said, I was just wondering, I had questions, they were answered, so,
That's what we're here for.
yeah, I appreciate it. All right. That's it.
Thank you. If there's anything from that comment that you wanted to respond to, you can. Any other questions from the board? There's no one online for this one, right?
Sharon Laser.
I think we're all set on this item then, so thank you.
I actually just said, sorry,
Yeah.
before we close it, there was discussion about an inclusionary housing unit that needed to be added to this. I don't know the merits of what we would need in order to sort of, the original. I don't know, I would consider possibility, I'd like to present to the board that maybe the site possibly is exempt from that, considering before, the 6 units didn't have an IZ unit added. Just something to consider. I don't have an argument to present to the board at this point, but anything we can do to, help out and provide more housing for people. Considering, we're not technically adding any new units to the site, it'd be great to offer to the board and see if it's something you guys would consider. So that's all I have.
Thank you. With that, we will close the public hearing and we'll just move to the next item, which is CPS 25-52, 110 Institute Road.
As you were closing that, Sharon, what your ratings for?
Most of them.
Wait. Yeah, what? Did she raise her hand before?
I think raised it well.
Where'd she go?
I'd say, so.
Is she still online?
Yeah.
Sorry, late breaking hand raising on that one. So we're reopening the public hearing. Sharon, we're here to hear you on this item.
Sorry, I raised my hand late because I didn't think this was going to come up. I heard the applicant make a statement regarding the affordable unit, and I'm certainly hoping that I understand his position, or the architect's position, but I really feel that we need affordable units, and this meets the criteria. It is more than 5 units, and I feel that 1 unit that is affordable is something that we should support, and I certainly hope that he will understand the value and the need for this in our housing market. So I just wanted to speak before the DRB in support of maintaining what the ordinance allows and have the creation of 1 affordable unit in this reconstruction. Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon. Anything you want to do? Okay,
Thank you very much.
with that, we'll close the public hearing. Thank you. Okay. Now we are on to ZP-25-5. Nope. That 25-52. We have the applicant here. Is there anyone online that wants to speak on this item, just so we can swear in everyone at once?
Doesn't look like it.
Okay. You would raise your right hand and swear that the testimony you give tonight is true and correct under pains and penalty of perjury?
I do.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about the sign plan?
Yeah, hi, I'm Marty Spalding. I'm the owner's rep for Burlington High School. From PCI Consulting, actually also the former school facilities director. This is Brian Lee from Freeman French and Freeman. I developed the master sign plan. So we are here to present the master sign plan for the Burlington High School and Tech Center. There are a few non-conforming items included in that master plan. We're hoping to maybe talk through and hopefully get some exemptions. But I'll maybe turn it over to Brian and he can talk to the details of the plan. Do we want to bring up?
Yeah, so I can kind of go through, the general plan. So generally, the new high school campus includes the Burlington High School. It includes some offices and facilities for Burlington School District, and it includes the Burlington Technical Center. So those are the 3 different entities that exist on that site. Our sign plan goes through, and I attempted to be as exhaustive as I could about signage that would occur on site. So you'll see a variety of elements, ranging from, we'll come back to them, but the monument and electronic display as you enter the site, directional signage, building mounted signage to identify the major entries, the building number sign, the fire department required kind of room identification vinyl signs in the windows of every building. I might be missing some. One thing that I want to address kind of right up front, because we had extensive discussion for the design advisory board on the topic, was the mural. That element is really a piece of the building that we have added structural infrastructure for a future piece of art. In putting together the master sign plan, and I'm the author of that initially before the district reviewed it, approved it to go in. I was trying to cover every base that I could find, and the closest thing I could find in the signage ordinance is the mural piece. So I put it in there as a mural. We actually don't have a piece of art designed for that. And based on the discussion at the design advisory board, we'd like to kind of withdraw that or ask that your kind of finding is that's better seen as an art installation opportunity, and that piece of the art would have to go through its own zoning process when they come to it. But we recognize there's this discrepancy within the way the city approaches art installations is a different process than murals, which is, that was not something I realized when I was putting that together. With that said, I can kind of, I don't know how you want me to talk through the different elements. There's basically I should say three other elements, as I understand it, that come under your review as requested deviations from the standards, the prescriptive standards in the signage ordinance. One is the site directional signs. Are we able to go down, or actually can we, there's a sign locations PDF there. I think that might be the one that's a little bit more useful to look at for this. Oh, I apologize. There's another file that actually shows the directional signs. This does show the locations for them, but there's another one that, yes, that proposed site signs plan. So within the site, because we're bringing people to multiple locations on the site, depending on which access they're looking for, there are, and it's a little bit hard to see here, but there are directional signs that we have designed that essentially assemble a set of directional signs into one location. So at the entry to the pull-off drive along Institute Road is the largest one, with arrows that can direct you to whether you're going to the Burlington High School, whether you're going to the Burlington Tech Center, whether you're headed around to the BHS Community Gym. Additional required notifications like that is only a bus only lane during certain hours of the day. The no beach parking sign requirement. And our intent with that signage approach was to avoid needing to put all of that information on discrete separate signs all in a cluster right at the end of the road. So
Should we go to
the, yeah, so there is a larger sample in the packet as well, but you can see kind of where they are located there. At multiple locations, there's different quantities of those signs, and the interpretation, do you remember where it is in the packet? I think that might have been which
number? Can we see the list?
After all that.
Yeah, no, there's a lot going on the site. It's a large site.
So a different PDF or a single?
Yeah, no, it's a different PDF. If you go back either to the first, it is in the signage packet, the original, or the master sign plan file. Yeah, so that first, that.
I have it on page 9, Scott, of the signage permit package.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mary.
Mhm.
Don't tell it a bad thing.
This is what I'm looking at.
To page 9 first.
A couple more pages, yeah.
Next time I get through it.
So at the top of this page, if you scroll up just a little bit, you can kind of see, or actually go down to the next page. Sorry, it is on the next page. There we go. So essentially what we have is two posts holding a series of stacked signs, and that is the interpretation we're requesting. That is the decision, the point I guess essentially for this board is accepting that that is a series of directional signs. Because our alternative is to provide all that information in 6 discrete signs on the home posts. And area, which would be allowed. In review with the design advisory board, you can give their comments, but they see.
Because if you were to make all of that information on one.
Well, it needs to
size
be,
requirement.
it needs to be visible to people, and the purpose of this is primarily, people are driving onto the site, they need to be able to quickly tell where to go to access the different aspects of the site.
And you also said you wanted to avoid having like a sign for each of these all next to each other.
For each of these pieces of information, right? So these are, the way that these are assembled, it is actually discrete aluminum planks essentially with that information that can be added, changed, or removed within each of these frames. So it is 2 aluminum posts, square posts, and pre-finished aluminum planks.
So it's both modular and looks modular.
Yes.
So rather than trying to reinvent the wheel, have you decided or looked into what works on other campuses where there's individual signs or just a directional like this? Seems
When you say individual signs.
well, rather than having individual directional signs.
Yeah.
Got the board that directs people, this is where you're gonna go for this is where you're gonna go for that. This is not the first time that we're trying to decide this from other institutions or campuses.
Right, I mean, this is a standard
Regular,
signage.
something that works, that works better than something else, that's what.
Yeah, I mean, that's why we proposed this. This is a standard signage product that for this purpose, for the flexibility. Both to, both now and in the future, if programs change or other things change, this offers the flexibility to add or remove directional signs as they need at key points around the site.
It's your experience and research that this works better than another method.
For a campus model.
For a campus, so like rather than having individual discrete posts for each one of these signs. Or rather than having like a large piece of plywood that somebody has painted on that you then have to change in the field.
Well, if you made it through the staff report, congratulations, you get a gold star, but my obligation is to go through every set of the standards. They can't do this as a freestanding sign, you're only allowed one. And they have to be able to direct visitors to the campus, to different sites on the campus, so they can't do this with one freestanding sign. They can do it with directional signs, so this is the request for an interpretation that each directional sign is compliant. But they're organized almost like a directory, something the sign regulations don't anticipate.
And the downside of that interpretation is you could take a bunch of segmented signs and paint one uniform giant sign on top of it.
You could do one sign.
Yeah.
Yeah, so imagine driving up because you want to go to the state soccer meet and you need to know where the parking is and you would be looking at one sign while there's cars lined up behind you. You're trying to figure out where you're supposed to go. Only because I've been to some of those meets.
Right, yeah, so this was obviously, and I will say, what we did in our approach to this site was to identify within what we could, everything, within the ordinance, but where we couldn't, to say, for the function of this building, we need some variance, we need some space here. And the other two categories, or the other two signs that fall into the same category are similar considerations, but I don't want to move on to this unless there's other questions from this. Okay, so I think the next one is really two signs in one, essentially the monument sign, which incorporates an electronic display. If you could go, I guess, back to the sign plan. I don't believe it's in this or is it in this PDF? Yes, keep going up, keep going up.
It is.
I think the monument sign street view gives a good illustration of what you're proposing.
That is a separate. Yes.
Yeah. But this does have the elevation, which identifies the yeah, right here. So there's two dimensional criteria that we're looking at here. One is pretty straightforward, I believe. The area for a monument to sign is allocated as 60 square feet. When we submitted this, we included both the electronic display, the text, and the logo as all part of that. End up at 72 square feet with the current design that is within the 20% allowable variation to the 60 square feet that the ordinance allows you to consider. We also identified that the dimensional criteria of the actual lettering of the Burlington High School and Technical Center portion of the sign is above. So basically, essentially, the location of this sign is higher than the ordinance describes. It sets a limit of 6 feet. We're at 9'4" to the top of the letters. So those are two dimensional criteria on the monument sign. Specifically, again, based on the scale of the site and the property, we felt this was appropriate, and we do, and Mary has made good reference. I would like, if we could, there's a file, I think it's a little farther down, that's called Site View, I believe.
Street view, monument and mural.
Yeah, Street View overlay. Was where now. And this shows, essentially, we're looking at the same location as the current monument sign. Yeah. So that shows the sign at the 9'4" height in relation to the building at North Avenue. The current location, if you go to the site right now, is inside of that construction fence. So in terms of visibility around the corner, we're farther back than that construction fence currently is, as the current sign is.
Further back from the road.
Yeah, we're behind the construction fence relative to the road, so there's no like visibility around issues from the road. I don't remember the dimensions, but it's a good distance back, and that is the current location. We're basically looking at reusing power and data access to the current monument sign for this. And
So
then
the staff, excuse me, Brian, the staff report outlines alternative compliance may be considered for location. So they are proposing an installation site that is not definitive to the ordinance, but it is allowable for consideration under alternative compliance for the sign. And that's on page 10 of the, we want to see the pretty pictures on the staff report.
And then the last piece of interpretation relates entirely to the programming of the electronic sign. And that really came out of us looking at the district's preferred way to operate such a sign. So essentially, the ordinance provides a maximum illumination level, that the messages cannot change any more frequently than once every 2 minutes, and that all that can be used on the changeable electronic display is 3 lines of text, one single color on one single background color. So within the master sign plan, you'll find, and again, we decided to ask for what we thought was appropriate. We've requested that the maximum light level be allowed to increase to 7,500 nits from the 5,000 that the ordinance lists. That's just based on our research for what's appropriate for direct light. The sign will be automatically dimming, and all of these elements are, they don't change the physical sign we'd have to buy. We have to manage all of this zoning compliance within program. So we can program it to go to whatever maximum height. In my view, the more important thing is to make sure it's programmed to appropriately dim as the weather dims and as we get to nighttime, which we will do. The second element was the cycle time. depending on your sources, you see anywhere from 4 to 10 seconds recommended. We chose 15 seconds as we thought that's anyone coming southbound on North Avenue is only gonna see a single message, but somebody who comes to the light, stops and is looking at this sign from more or less this point of view, will probably see the initial message and one changeover in a 15-second cycle, maybe a third. And then we requested some discretion to use the logo.
Caption.
Yeah, emojis and the team or the school mascot logo, and that sort of imagery in the sign. Get away from a single color, 3 lines of text and have a little bit more room for expression.
Could even be like an image of a student.
Like a student who won with the color, something like that. So those are all within your discretion. We basically thought the school is going to want to operate this sign in a way that works for them. Community, obviously the school district is a member of the community's intention with this is to communicate, you know, it's the community communications, right? It's to the students, to the taxpayers and to the visitors, and they, I think are open to ongoing dialogue and feedback about whatever they are doing with the sign. But the ordinance sets a box around where they can start. So those are the 3, as I understand it, the 3 elements that we really need consideration on. Recognizing that you'll probably take action on the mural language. I'm glad to change that to say, you know, that's sacred out of here. So it's the directional signs, the electronic display.
Mary.
Yes.
On this digital sign. This is obviously more in line with what we feel is what is today's industry standard than what, you know, the zoning current requirements allow.
So for the illumination, the NIT standard, your comment was that basically 5,000 and then the 20% relief allowance. So realistically, the most we could grant as a body would be 6,000 nits.
Correct.
Okay.
Where there's a definitive and articulated number, then you get a 20% consideration for alternative compliance. Other things like use of logos and alternative colors, that's at your discretion.
So that being said, would you be okay with 6,000? Or like, we could not grant that 7,500?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're asking for as much as we can get within the parameters of what you can give. And, you know, again, recognizing that this is gonna be a programmed element, actually already had a quick aside, a little bit joking, but I think we all have to figure out how do we go measure 5,000 versus 6,000 nits. But that's a whole other thing. We will have to do that. But the reality is you can't buy, like, it's not like a 5,000 nit sign is a product you go buy. It's going to be a programmed element, and we are committed to making sure that the sign is below whatever threshold we have to keep it below.
Mary, for the ordinance on the brightness of screen, is that? I am confident the intention is at nighttime, but like, is there any language about when that is in play at all? When that standard is set?
It's just an articulated standard for electronic displays. It's considered a type of lighting, so.
And it does, the ordinance does specify the requirement for the dimming. So it doesn't provide numerical values to that portion for the dimming, but again, I think there's no intention, you know, for this to be a glowing thing. The intention is to make it legible and readable in as many light conditions as possible.
So the other one where we don't have, sorry, you had another question.
I mean, the specific items that are going to require your discretion start on page 8 of the staff report. If you just want a short.
Yeah, no, I love that little list
Yeah,
that
it
you
was
made.
really
It's just like,
Yeah.
all in all, you know, the canopy signs are fine. I don't think anybody has a problem with room identification. We all understand that emergency responders need to know that. If you are okay with the with the directional signs being grouped together, if you can find that compliant, these are some of the easier questions. The other questions that are requiring your discretion are page 8 and 9. So that would, I hope that gives you a shortcut to making your decisions.
Yeah, so what I was gonna say, not necessarily a question, but, you know, if you find that what is granted is not sufficient, the normal process would be petitioning the planning commission to reconsider or take this as part of a broader change to the sign ordinance. But we're limited in what exemptions we can provide, which I think was.
The level of illumination, that's mostly for the daytime. Is that correct?
Yeah, my understanding is it's, and again, I'm way more familiar with things like foot candles and other measurements, but my understanding is that it's really like, how far do we go in direct sunlight? As soon as you get into the sort of weather point this time of year, when it's cloudy all day, we are not, I'm assuming we're not gonna be up at that light level anyway, because you dim it down. I think cloudy day, it's something like 1,000 minutes, and by nighttime it's lower. I'm not an expert, this is all just based on talking to the sign manufacturers and the
I'm just throwing this out there as a, way to interpret this. It's 20% on the standards, but this is something that changes over time. We not look at it as 20% of the time.
Be an interpretation.
It's not like the other thing is like, because it's transient. Your average, if our average is 20% above.
Yeah, no, I mean, does the language of the ordinance say anything about max average or any way of computing that, or just nits?
20%.
For the other one that I think is harder is the height of the monument sign, because your 20% would only get you like just over 7 feet. And does that completely throw out this design and you'd be coming with something different anyway?
if we were reduced to below that height, we would have to change it, it is certainly the description of the ordinance is that it's essentially the sign components. So we have kind of this big stone wall on which we are mounting the sign elements. If we had to lower those, we'd have to come back with something a little different. And that was where we were, it's the question of, is it the height is the number, or is it the location? You guys have to make that interpretation, I guess.
So your interpretation is
It's
that
kind
it's the
of, where
height
is the
of
sign?
the sign itself, like the top and bottom of the sign needs to be less than 6 feet, is that what you're
And I understand that it's been, yes, essentially. That was one of the things that I don't know whether it appeared formally within the DAB. I think there was a general discussion within the report. There was a general discussion that the scale and height, it is what we're showing because it's appropriate to the property and the location. I'm trying to further interpret your zoning, you guys.
Well, Mary, the question I have on that, so if it was a more like traditional monument sign with 2 bars and the sign is.
A
off the
monument
ground.
sign would have a base.
Oh, it always has a base, that's the definition of monument sign. Got it. So that 6 feet is. I don't know.
Our earlier conversations with Brian's firm where we want to retain our electronic message board, but we have this idea for this Vermont shaped piece of stone with maybe a logo. And I mean, both are understandable. So what you're seeing is the merging of their desire to have some kind of iconic monument as you enter the campus, combined with an electronic display.
If the stone had no words on it, would that still be a monument sign, or would it just be the electronic display? I find our sign ordinance so confusing.
Yeah, well, it does say that a monument sign may include an electronic display, so I think
It would still be a.
that's putting them together.
But my understanding, or just to my understanding of the ordinance is the surface. It gets confusing where we've given, I guess, this much shape to the surface. I don't know how much shape it is, it's a trapezoid, but if it were a wall, if this were a brick wall, it would be the area of the lettering on the wall. So that's where I also find it.
Like the Champlain College sign, for example.
Exactly, where at that corner on Main Street, there's a curved wall, but the area of the sign is Champlain College, that's just on a site wall.
So like the existing sign, we're not sure if it applies or not. Because it is, two brick pillars. Both of those brick pillars are over 6 feet, not much over, but it's like 6'5". But then the sign in between is 6 feet. So to like your point, to those pillars, are they part of that 6 feet or is it just the signboard itself? I don't know that we know that answer, but it's a similar situation here. Yeah, the letters were actually below the granite stone at let's say 7 foot height.
Will there be any plantings in front of the sign or near the sign?
Honestly, we're still working through a little bit of that. That was part of our application. I think that's to say, I think it is likely that we'll try to head there, but we have not committed to any.
There are current, I think so.
There are currently plantings around the sign. But we haven't committed to that.
And your concern is that if the sign were lowered at all, or that kind of that bottom portion were taken out, that it wouldn't be visible enough from the road?
Yeah, our feeling is it's the right scale and proportion to the site. And I, as I kind of alluded or said previously, that we did make a decision to come forward with what we thought was the right design for this property for under the $60 million building site. I think if you find that you have to prove it, we will, design something else and or talk to planning and zoning city council and say, well, why should we do this? But that's, this is the step in the process.
Any other?
Yeah, the frequency of the message changing, can you discuss a little bit about how you came to that?
Yeah, so I mean, I guess on the surface, 2 minutes is essentially, because if you have at least one part of the message that you want to be sure most people see, you're gonna just put that up. So you basically get one message and you can change it when you have a completely new message. Obviously the district was envisioning something much more where they could cycle between, the date and time of day and schedule and some event that's coming up or whatever. I looked at resources that I could find mostly online, and I found a lot of different things that mostly said, like for advertising 4 to 10 seconds, that seemed aggressive to me. I looked at typical light cycles, 8 to 15 seconds, and I thought that would allow somebody driving north on North Avenue to see a message. If they go past the site, they might see a second message, and certainly if they go through one light cycle, they would see the second message without it being a flashing advertising type display. I mean, my understanding of the intent of that restriction is to keep it from feeling like you're getting bombarded with information by a changing sign. And so, it's a little bit of an attempt to compromise between 2 minutes and that's something that we thought would allow at least a significant portion of people to see a change message.
Especially with
A little hard to figure out which is best with that. If you're sitting at a stoplight, you're gonna see 3 different signs come up. Changes. Versus that, or is it just driving by? It's a little. What's the best way?
Right, but also with the limited text, being able to cycle things through, you can provide additional information about maybe like the same event. Varsity game Tuesday night, 3 o'clock, JV game Tuesday, you know what I mean? Versus having that displayed for 2 minutes and then nobody sees the next event.
Basically, the transition time is longer than the 15 seconds you're asking for, the way it's programmed, it's probably just gonna be one message.
It's all,
It's not practical.
right, it is, this is all within the programming of the sign, so there is some. Yeah, some leeway there, but yes, I think there is a practical limit to how useful it is to have multiple messages if you don't expect most people to see them.
Mary, you didn't have this in your short little nice summary, but is your view that the 2-minute standard is a numerical standard, and so then we only have 20%?
Yeah, it was like 1.5 or something. So it was somewhere else in the document.
One.
I don't remember where, but
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, it would, they couldn't cycle quicker than 1.5 minutes by calculating the 20% differential.
Certainly much more, appropriate or whatnot than the current standard.
Any other questions from the board? Any comment from the public? Okay. With that, we'll close the public hearing. Thank you.
thank you.
Did we now have our applicant over
No calls, no texts.
116 Sunset Cliff?
Push back to January.
We need to make a motion on that.
Yeah, it's not a public hearing, so we can just. Following up. Yeah. Right. About the
Recording stopped.
Miles, Marina, you all have been quiet, so I will make sure to make space for you. We haven't forgotten you're there.
Okay.
So we are with 351 North Avenue, the TDM.
I'm sympathetic to the